decided Sunday school class would be on why you need to be in church. And we had that people that normally don't miss church. But Mike is our Sunday school teacher. I am not. And I don't like when he's not here, and I know that you guys don't like when he's not here. Sometimes there's nothing that can be done about it, which is very few and far between. That's part of what makes him a good Sunday school teacher as well, as you can count on him no matter what's going on, that he's going to prepare something with the Spirit guiding him for Sunday morning. So I'm going to ask him to come up here and get us started.
Yes, I'm sorry that I was not here last week. I apologize for that. So we're in the book of Genesis, in chapter 8, and 2 weeks ago, I'm glad today's here because I feel like it's an opportunity for me to redeem myself and that Randy can stop talking, because you can see in the second bullet point, somewhere along the lines, 2 weeks ago, I said that Moses was on the ark. Now, obviously, Moses is the one telling the story. Noah is on the ark. So it was a Freudian slip. However, you know me and Randy. We banter back and forth, and I got texts and phone calls and made sure that for 2 weeks that I made that mistake. So hopefully he will be quiet now. And hopefully I won't make that mistake again. So...
That's pretty strong.
Shut up. I ain't scared.
That's his politically correct. Which means him.
Yeah. I should have heard what I told him on the phone.
That's politically correct.
So, 2 weeks ago, we talked about how God remembered Noah and what that meant. In that he remembered Noah, and the Bible also uses the same references when they says that he remembered Rachel and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, and that not that any of those people were an afterthought, but rather that what it means is God keeps his promises. When God tells you he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And so that was Moses' way of telling us that God is communicating with us that he kept his promises to Noah, who was obedient, as we have been learning throughout this whole chapter, what obedience really looks like, because Noah was an extremely obedient person, even though he had doubts like we do and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes we wonder what it is that God's trying to tell us, and we wonder where we're supposed to go and what avenues we're supposed to explore and all of that. But he still remained obedient. He still did what he was told. And we talked about how Noah was the only righteous person, and that even while they were afloat, if you will, that the sons and the daughters and the daughter-in-laws and his wife were probably complaining about this and that, but still Noah being the leader of the family, and how everybody in the family was saved because of his righteousness, because the Bible told us that he was the only one that was righteous. His sons weren't righteous, the daughters weren't righteous, the wife wasn't righteous. It was just Noah, but because it was his house, the whole house was saved, which is a foundation for us today, in that we need to keep our house right. Gentlemen, brothers, we need to keep our houses right.
Amen.
And then and assure that those who are in our house are saved and redeemed. So then we talked about that, and we talked about how God closed up all of the, that he did not stop up all of the fountains of the earth, but that he stopped up some. We still have natural springs today. He restrained the rain, but he didn't take it away. We still get rain today. We talked about, we saw some of the pictures about where we assume the resting place of the ark is. We made some arguments as to the archaeological findings that really is the ark, so we saw those pictures. And now this morning we're going to pick up in chapter 8 in verse 6. This is where we are going to begin today. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. There's one of the first things that Noah did upon coming to rest was open the window and sending out the raven. There's significance in the fact that he chose the raven first, and why he did not allow the raven back into the ark. Does anyone want to take a shot as to why that was important? Anybody?
Did he not allow the raven, or the raven just didn't come back?
Well, he closed the window and he didn't let the raven back in. The raven went to and fro and used the ark to rest on.
Until the waters were receded.
Right. But the question is, what was the significance of the raven? They still do it today, ravens. They're feasters of dead animals and dead things. And so if he had sent that, he sent that bird out first because there would be food out there, and the significance of that, of the raven going to and fro and coming back to the ark, meant that it would go out there and it would eat, and not letting him back into, him or her, whatever, the bird, back into the ark, was that I don't want to feed you. I want you to stay hungry because you're going to stay out there, you're going to continue to search for food, you're going to continue to fly to and fro. He came back to the ark to rest because there was still water. Noah needed something to communicate with him what was going on outside. Once there was a place for that raven to build a nest, there was for it to rest and live, it wouldn't come back. So as long as it was coming back, Noah knew something was going on outside of the ark. So there was significance in that. And that was that. Verses 8, 9, and 10. And also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark. For the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. We have not looked at the word stayed, and it was pretty important. The original Hebrew for that word is cool, and it means to twist, to whirl, to dance, to writhe, to fear, tremble, travail. So when you read that, that he stayed for another 7 days, again, when we read quickly, we might not really think about this, but what this word really is projecting is a picture that Noah was restless. You know, they had rested at a certain spot on the land. They went off the ark. I think any one of us could try to imagine. They've been on the ark for a year, and they went off. So when it says stayed, it's significant because, again, this is a picture of his what? His obedience. He's not opening the door. They're not prematurely exiting the ark. They're doing exactly what he's being told to do, and he's being obedient. And as the pastor says, that's a picture of patience.
Although it's hard.
It's very hard. But there's rewards for being patient and obedient.
Number 7 is always in here. Number 7 is a number of perfection also.
It is. The significance of the two birds is Noah knew that the raven feeds off the carcasses of the dead and uses that bird accordingly. It wasn't that he expected the bird to return. He expected the birds to stay gone. He knew that once the birds stayed gone, then it would be fit for them to disembark the ark. The dove is a bird that returns home. It's going to come home. He didn't use that bird to do anything else other than to go and come. And again, when that bird stopped coming, then it would have a home. It would have made itself a home.
Well, brother,
Yeah.
Wouldn't that bird, it considered the ark its home?
It
correct?
did, but it
So
wasn't
what
going to
it was
stay the
doing,
home. And it
he
wasn't.
couldn't find, a bird will go out and pick stuff up and make a nest and bring
Right.
it back to their home.
Right.
So he was waiting on the branch.
But keep in mind, brother, that was not the dove's home to begin with, and it wasn't the dove's home to end with. So he's sending that bird out because, again, the test is, here's the thing. We have to remember that we're on top of a mountain. Not very many trees or places for birds to find rest on the top of a mountain. So if that bird, which we will get into with the olive branch, if that bird did not return home, that meant it found a place to create a home, which means that the waters have abated even more than off of the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's,
understand that.
you know what I mean?
I understand that, yeah.
Okay. All right. But going back to the patience part, because we can't ignore this, waiting for the 7 days and making sure that we pay attention to the word stayed, and that this was not something that he did easily. Rife. You've heard that we rife in pain, you know, where we're sitting there twisted. It was painful for them to sit there for 7 days. Another 7 days. And sometimes the things that we believe God wants us to do, because remember, as we're studying this, we've said that the book of Genesis is a foundational book of our faith, of our beliefs. And from these stories, these people, these events that we're reading about, we're supposed to take foundational issues away from those. This being patience. Some of the worst mistakes that we make are mistakes that because we didn't exercise patience. And we talk about prayer and how we expect things to be done right now. I want it done now. When we don't wait for God's time to get things done. It's not about our plan. It's about His plan, what He wants done. So this is an exercise of patience and obedience, because it takes obedience to be patient. I think it's fair to say that if you're not patient, you really don't have very much obedience. You don't have very much self-discipline if you're not a patient person. Go ahead.
The Bible says, with patience you possess your soul. You've got to be patient. Here he stayed another 8 months. Waiting, he simply waited on the Lord, you know, waiting on God to instruct them. They said we let the ark landed someplace, and right now it's in modern day Turkey, the mountains of Arafat.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the ark landed at, or set down at, in the mountains of Arafat. Even though it was on land, he still waited 8 months. He waited patiently. We get too patient. We get too impatient sometimes. We want things done right now,
Right.
in a hurry. That's where we miss the boat when we do that.
We also need to consider the representations that the raven is of the world. We have to understand that we should not think that we can be in the world and of God at the same time. The raven is not going to return anything to us, and the world is not going to return anything to us. The Spirit descended on the wings of a dove.
Yes, it did.
The dove represents the Spirit, if we're talking about, you know, symbolism. And the Spirit will bring something to you. The dove brought back the olive branch, which we're not to yet, but that dove brought something back to show that the land was getting ready, you know. So there's some symbolism into these two different birds as well. And another, again, if you want to look into the symbolism of that, remember we talked about the ark being the floating barn, but also representing the church. You know, and Moses having Noah. I caught myself that
That's
time.
all right. You're all right.
Noah having put the raven out and not letting that raven in, you can symbolize that. We have the church, we put the world out, we don't let that world back in. We let people in,
Yeah.
you know, but we can't let the world in to our church. Go ahead.
Brother Mike, and it also tells us that there were all types of animals on that boat, so it's all types of people in the church.
Mm-hmm.
All types. We can't just narrow it down to one individual type of
Right. That's right.
What do you think, bro?
I didn't have that, but that was enlightening.
I have no thought on that.
Okay, so then we say, we also read that many speculate that the 7 work weeks, and that on the 7th day was the Sabbath, and he sent the birds out. Another reason why he waited until the 7 days is because, like you said, that's the perfect amount of time, and then the Sabbath was on the 7th day. So it's a theory. There's nothing biblical. It's a theory that was done on the Sabbath. So. Because I think that when we get to the part where we see that got that one right. Noah, you're screwing me all up, man. What's the first thing he did when he got off the ark?
He built an
He
altar.
built the altar. So again, we're seeing, it's not unreasonable to believe that while on the ark, all of his obedience that he had building the ark and being the only righteous person left on the planet, that while on the ark he continued to be obedient and faithful and observed the Sabbath and was doing things in accordance with at the time the laws at the time. So moving forward, verses 11, 12, and 13. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 600th and first year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Now, just in case anybody doesn't know, that's what an olive leaf and olives, that's what it looks like. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, but that's what it looks like. I've never seen one because I don't like olives. So, never plucked any off. But I thought I would share that. Now there's a degree that can be earned for theology, and I want to say this because the reason we read things, and we've already talked about this when we went through the lineage and the time periods and all of that, is because this is Sunday school, and I don't pretend to be a professor. There's a degree in theology that gets way deep into a lot of things. And there's a lot of people that take, when they say this 600th year in the first month, they do math. And they're figuring out what year it is, what day it is. They're figuring all of that out. I didn't do that, just so you know. Okay? But in generally accepted amongst who I have read, that the waters receded, the boat came to a rest, the birds were sent out as Noah's test run, that it was summertime, the beginning of summer. Okay? We have talked about the passages and how the wind was also, we can't forget that the wind is at work here, which is the Spirit. So as the waters are receding and coming off of the earth, we have some things going on. Number one, the Spirit, the wind is working, because that's a lot of water. We talked about this. Like Brother Dave, 15 cubits above the peak of the highest mountain.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of water to get rid of. There's also people who pontificate the fact that the reason why our axis as a planet is off is because of the weight of the flood. So, there's a lot of thoughts that's going in science, which I'm not going to go real deep into, but there's a lot of thought going on in theories out there, okay? But we're talking about the fact that the sun is shining, the breeze is blowing, the heat is coming, because the mathematicians are saying that this is about the beginning of summer. The olive branch being significant because the trees now, as the water has abated, earth is starting to revive itself. The Lord is allowing things to grow because, hey, Noah and his family are going to have to eat. Those animals are going to have to eat. So, everything being underwater for as long as it was, God is bringing life back to the planet. There's significance to that. When we get saved and we're baptized and we go into the water and we come out of the water, we're new. We are a new creature. Okay? The earth has now been underwater, completely submerged, and now it's coming out anew. If you recall, the reason that we went through this flood is because of the corruption into the earth from us, from man. Okay? So this is a cleansing of everything. And so now we have the olive branch, and we have the summertime, we have the breeze, we have the sun, everything working together to get the water off of the earth, and everything starting anew. That's symbolism. There's something to read about this story, and it's just not just about, well, God thought the world was so evil, he just got rid of everything. This is symbolic. It's at the antithesis of some of the ceremonies that we have. The earth was baptized.
Yeah. He said
And the ark is considered, that was baptism too for Noah and the family. It's the baptism of the church.
the ark of safety.
That's right. So, I want to... I'm sure that, plus from the window, it doesn't say whether or not Noah could see what was going on. But again, if we consider the olive trees, they were on top of a mountain, so the water had to totally recede. We see that the water is off the face of the earth, is what it says. So they're waiting another 7 days, because has anybody had the experience where you may be out with a vehicle and you ride out on some, and it looks like it's dry, but as soon as you hit it, you sink because it's soaked. The ground is soaked, and then you get stuck. So we're talking about in the next verse, where we're going to see, or in verse 13 there, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. We needed to wait that extra time, because while the water was off of the face of the earth, it wasn't out of the ground. So take time to understand, why do we wait yet another 7 days? Now, God knew that, and I challenge any of you to try to put Brother Cletus, I'm glad you're here, because when Brother Cletus teaches a Sunday school lesson, he always talks about the most important thing for us to do to try to understand the Bible the best is to put ourselves in their shoes in that time. Put yourself in Noah's shoes at that time, and try to feel about how important it was for them to get off that ark.
It's very, very, very important to put our place now. You're right there with Moses in this story, and
Noah, with Noah.
with Noah right now.
I didn't. You got everybody messed up, man.
We're gonna be the church known
I'm going to tell what, you better preach straight today, brother. I'm just that's all I got to say. Because I am going to be back there, and me and Billy are going to watch you like,
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody.
yeah, but I can't believe how sensitive I am, as I don't want to make one. He's in my head. He got me. He's mentally inside my head right now, and he needs to get up out of there. Right. So I'm sure that, when he removed the covering and he was able to look outside, he saw that there was no water anymore, but he still needed to wait another 7 days. So again, we talked about flooding as we know it, and we see a town underwater in New Orleans and everything, and we've talked about this in the past and how we can imagine a flood in our sense, and how we see, New Orleans was probably one of the worst that we ever see. We usually see, house tops or tree tops, tops of street signs and stuff like that, but imagine that you don't see anything but water. I mean, this is what they were doing. They had nothing but water. There was absolutely no land anywhere. You can imagine that if you're out on a really large lake or out in the ocean on a ship somewhere and not have land. But how do you go through that for a year? For quite that long, with not even seeing land, and then you take a little covering off the boat, you look outside and you see land. How anxious are you to get out there onto the land? So again, with the obedience, sometimes as Christians, we have to be able, and I say this all to myself because I am constantly getting in my own way. We have to get out of our own way and let the Spirit have its perfect work.
Yeah.
We have to do that, and that takes incredible patience.
Mike, I have been in the oil field, and I've heard stories of people that work over on ocean rigs, you know, on the sea, and they go out for 3 months. And for 3 months they're standing on a tiny little platform. Well, I don't know how tiny it is, but it's not near as big as the land. You know?
Right.
But they're standing on this platform, and all they can see on all four sides is water. And I've heard stories of people going completely crazy, committing suicide, jumping off of the side because they couldn't take it anymore. You know, they knew that they were going home sooner or later, but they couldn't wait that long. You know what I mean? And it'll make you nuts.
Yep.
It'll make you plan. And imagine how Noah felt knowing that there was, you know, even these guys knew that there was land.
Yeah.
And they just had to wait a little longer.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, remember we talked about when he was building the ark, about all of the people, including most likely his sons, his daughter, his own wife. What are you doing? Why are we doing this? You know, the people being even more harsh on him, calling him names and all of that kind of stuff, because remember, the world was just wicked. It was the word we used, right? And so they didn't really care. But this is my dad, who's got this thing about building this really big boat, and they've never seen rain before. Why are we building a boat? So all of the ridicule and the persecution that he was under, most likely, and probably having days of doubt himself, this is a picture of a Christian and how we are supposed to live. This is our lives. If you really sit and look at Noah and you consider, don't just read the story, stop and consider everything that he had to go through. When we talk about Jesus Christ coming, are we not called nuts?
Yep.
Are we not made fun of?
Yep.
Are we not, our own country, no more National Day of Prayer, God is, and then for us, it may become a time where we're just like all the other countries and we'll go to jail for wanting to love our Lord. I mean, that's quite possible. I really don't know. But what I do know is that we have examples like in Noah, because that's what we're talking about. There are more, but we have and obedience. And when do we or do we not as Christians ask, I wonder, why am I going through this trial? What did I do that was so, what is, we always have questions. We're always questioning things. So we can't consider that Noah didn't question anything. We're not going through anything near what Noah's going through. So I'm sure Noah had questions, and yet he remained. The foundation, I believe, of what we should be taking away from this is, even though he had doubt, even though he had questions, even though his own family was turning their back on him, he remained obedient to God. And because of that, his house was saved.
You asked that question, why am I going through this trial? And we ask that quite a bit. I know I occasionally I do, and it's funny that you asked that question because God never put a trial on Noah to punish him.
No.
God put the trial on Noah because Noah was the only one he found righteous.
That's right.
And that speaks volumes.
And that's important. And that's important because when you're not righteous, the easiest thing to do is quit.
That's right.
The easiest thing to do is do not what you're supposed to be doing. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to do the right thing.
Most of the time.
To tell the truth. Sometimes is more painful than anything else. It's not easy. And our Lord never said it was going to be easy. His travels to Calvary wasn't easy. He had to carry his own cross. And the thing is, he's even told us, he's like, don't worry about your cross. I have your cross. Just do what I ask you to do. We don't even have to carry our cross. He's got that taken care of. And yet we still lack patience and are disobedient. Yes, Johnny?
And that is why the avenue back to God is what it is. The only thing that a human can do, and they don't always do it right, but I'm saying the only thing that a human can do right from start to the end is the one thing that God gave the avenue to get to heaven, and that was to be faithful. It's the only thing we can do.
That's right.
We don't all do it, but it is possible to stay faithful to God. And that's why that's the avenue to heaven, is because that's the only thing, even with sin in this world, that you can do is stay faithful.
Right.
It's just a
Which
belief.
is the same thing as obedience, what you're saying.
Right. And I think that this chapter speaks profoundly about obedience, but also I just want to touch on this, the spirit of discernment. Because God was speaking to Noah. And it doesn't say whether or not this was the thunder's voice from heaven, or whether it was through his conscience, or whether it was, just, through prayer or whatever.
Maybe learning
But in
words.
some way, shape, or form, God is communicating with Noah throughout this journey. And when he should or should not get off the ark, and all of the instructions that he's been given to Noah. And it occurs to me that we have to be able to have the spirit of discernment, because sometimes we believe God is talking to us and it's not God. We can't forget that we've said, for such a powerful angelic spirit, Satan has no power. He has no power to do anything in particular. He just lies. He is the chief liar. And that in itself is where his power lies, because as long as he can get us to believe the lie, control the head, control the body. Has everybody ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay? You control somebody's head, you're going to control their body. Okay? So now, if Satan can get in our minds, he controls our bodies. If he can get into our head that God is telling us to leave one job and go to another, and that's not really what God, he'll control our lives. And we'll be sitting there wondering, well, what's going on? Because I thought I was doing what God said. You have the spirit of discernment to be able to know what's right and what's wrong. That's true. And we're not always right and wrong. Sometimes we think we're doing right, And there's a lot of wonderful, if you Google it, there's a lot of wonderful services out there, or messages on the spirit of discernment, and asking yourself questions, is what I'm doing anti-scripture? Is it going to cause me to sin? Is what I'm thinking that God is telling me, is that going to serve God's will? Because God's never going to tell us to do anything that's a sin, and he's never going to tell us to do anything that's not within his will, and to be hurtful and stuff like that.
That would also drive home the point that you've been trying to make from the beginning.
Which is what I can.
The discernment, you're right, we don't always make the right decision, but you know why? In most cases, because we're not patiently waiting for the answer.
Yeah.
We hear something, and it sounds good, that's what I wanted to hear, so I'll say that's God, and I'll just go ahead and do it, and you find out it's not.
Right.
Many times we get ahead of God, too. We get ahead of God. We
It
need to
might-
be patient and wait.
Right, it might, and that's a good point, because it might be what he wants for us, but it might not be what he wants you to do
Now.
No,
right now.
no.
Yeah.
And you're out
It
ahead
is
of it.
strange, does it sound strange that one man, Noah and the ark, brought the church into existence at that time? Through the ark?
Yep.
My goodness.
You know why?
If God used one man
I'm going back
to
again.
bring salvation to us.
Protect the seed.
I'm going back to the seed. This is the reason for everything. This is a reason for perfection on the ark. This is a reason why that everything is perfect, because the seed of the woman that would eventually be the Christ of Israel. That's what we've got to keep in mind. This is what this is all about.
Yeah. What it represents. It represents, the ark represents
It's
Christ.
the ark of safety.
Mhm.
Which is also the church.
It was safe.
Ark of
This
the
building
church.
isn't ours.
The
This
church.
building belongs to Christ.
That's right.
This is our ark.
Mhm.
Yeah.
An ark of safety, yes.
Yeah. I know that I put it in the future because I have an example of this, and perhaps I got ahead of myself. Well, there's no perhaps, I got ahead of myself. But I have an example in my own life. We can do things half right too. And Brother Randy has been, like I said, I think everybody knows that we've been friends since before he decided to answer the call. When we were out doing things that weren't right, we went together to do some things that weren't right. But, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But what I'm getting to is that there was a day, and he went through this journey with me, you know, where my first marriage wasn't exactly what it should be. I wasn't thinking about my service to God when I got married, even though, you know, she proclaimed herself to be a Christian and whatnot. It wasn't in the forefront of our minds. And we lived life out there, so on and so forth, and then that ended. And then, so when that ended, I said to myself, that won't happen again. God's going to be the head of this. If I get in another relationship, God is going to be the head of our house, and He's going to be the head of our marriage. Because I don't want it to be destroyed again. Through the journey in meeting my present wife, there was a lot of things where I sat back and said, I believe God is talking to me. I would talk to Randy, I was like, no, this woman is a gift from God because she's a devout Christian. You know, we would talk about it all the time. And because of that, things went really quick with that marriage. And Randy, we were the first people that Randy ever married as a preacher. But as I sit and I analyze the journey now, and I go back and I look at some of the things we did, I honestly don't believe. I believe I was listening to the devil sometimes. I do believe that God sent her to me. I believe our marriage is godly, and I believe we're going to be okay because we both put God first in our lives. But there are some things that we did along that journey that I look back now and say, no, that wasn't right. You know, because God doesn't tell us to do things that go against His commandments.
That's right.
And that's one of the things that, like I said, I know I've listened to Chip Ingram. If any of you want to write that name down, you can search him on the internet. He has a great service on listening to God and some of the principles that you should apply when you're trying to figure out which voice is that's in my head. Is that God or is that the devil? Go ahead.
You know, that's why it's so important you give this example. You know that God intended this to be your wife. You talked about, you said about how like along the way there was a thing here or there. No, we shouldn't have did it that way, or we should have waited for this, whatever it may be. That is the exact reason why you are to be married equally yoked.
Yeah.
Because you were equally yoked, even though you got off track here, there, whatever these things you're talking about, because you were equally yoked, it's still going to work its way through because God intended and you were both.
I bring that up because I believe that it's an example of things where I believe that I was listening a lot of the times, and at the time I was taking the job, I believed everything was coming to me from God. I believed everything. This is right. This is the right thing to do. You know, and we prayed over it and everything. I took counsel from Randy. We talked a lot about things, but as I have matured and understand a little bit more, I mean, I lost my job over that. Just getting married, I lost my job because of circumstances that I thought were okay and believed that I should put above rules and procedure. It's not okay, you know. But like Randy said, you know, I still believe that God was with me because 3 weeks later I had another job. You know, and my wife and I never fought or argued over it. You know, it was because we both pray a lot and we agreed a lot on God and we kept Him, again, the head of our house and focused on that. We survived, and we're going to survive everything else that comes down the road because we believe in God.
Yeah.
So it's an example of we have to be careful about, you know, it doesn't, I know I got it in somewhere upcoming, but I mean things like we say, you know, God's opening doors, or, you know, things like that, you know. Yeah, God might be opening that door, but the devil may be opening that door. You got to think. You have to apply reason, you know, about things. So that's that lecture. Moving on, 14, 15, 16, 17. And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth. that they may breed abundantly in the earth and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And so we see here that on the 27th day, the water was dried up from the face of the earth as well as from the earth. So that meant that it would be good for footing. You're not going to sink into this mud bath. And so he gives Noah the go-ahead to disembark. And we just finished talking about verse 13, how happy Noah would have felt, how happy he would have been to be off of the ark and to be on dry ground and land for the first time in months and months and months. And again, I asked, what was the first thing that he did? They didn't do anything except build the altar. Again, service to God. Even now we're talking about a journey in a valley, if you will, with the flood and all of the negative stuff that's going on, and he never lost disobedience. Now we're talking about a happy time, right? We're talking about a time, I'm off the ark, I'm safe, I'm alive, the earth is new, everything is beautiful. Let me continue to worship God. As Christians, what do? When we're going through our valley, it's Lord, Lord, Lord. Then when we come on top of the mountain and we're on solid footing, we forget about God.
Yeah, we're on cloud 9.
And we say, hey, I did this. I worked for this. This is mine, blah, blah, blah. Noah's obedience and his faithfulness to God is an example that no matter what we're going through, whether it's the flood or whether it's coming out on the solid ground, never forget to put God first, ever.
Amen.
This is an example. When you read this story, Noah is an example of a Christian. And we ought to follow that example.
That's right.
Matthew Henry says it like this. You have the quote right there. God consult our benefit rather than our desires, for he knows what is good for us better than we do for ourselves.
Amen.
When God knew the earth was ready to receive all the animals and all of the families, then he said, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. My timing, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Whereas most of us, and I'll raise my hand if nobody else wants to, I'm going to raise mine, I would have left earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I would have said, oh no, it stinks up in here.
I've probably been,
I'm leaving.
I've probably been like one of the guys on that oil field and jumped. Just, I think I'll take my chance. I don't know.
I think one of the most difficult things Christians have to do, and this is it, I knew it was coming, discern between what God's telling you to do and what Satan tells us to do. Our orders come from one of two places. One of two places. That's it. God or the devil.
Brother, I have a witness of that in my own life. That job that I had at Halliburton, that job took me away, and I could hear, and I even said it, that this job is going to make me something different. It's going to make me something I don't want to be. But I took the job because I needed money. And although I could hear the good Lord, I knew the difference. I could hear the good Lord saying, you don't need that job. You just need to trust.
Yeah.
And I thought, but I need this money. And although the Lord blessed me anyway, He allowed me to use that money for His purpose.
Yeah. Yes.
He allowed me to use that.
But therein lies the story, Don't think that I'm saying, because we may make a wrong choice, we say that we're hearing God, so we obey what we think we're hearing from God, and it was really the devil. It isn't the end. I mean, just like I said, I thought I was being obedient in all of the things that was going on, because I met Kathy at the jail, and she was like 2 or 3 levels below me in supervision. I mean, I was the assistant superintendent, so pretty much except for the superintendent, everybody was a subordinate to me. Everybody. But there were levels of supervision in between, so I didn't think it was all that bad, because I'm not doing her evaluations. I'm not directly supervising her. And I'm not talking about, I rationalized this 121 ways, man. I'm not talking about a young schoolgirl out of college with a degree here. I'm talking about a woman who's older than me. She's had some trials. I've had some trials. We both believe in God. We talk about God. Explain to me how this is wrong. I believe God sent her to me, you know. And there were a lot of things that I was saying, and then there was a lot of things that we did along the way that I know right now. No, I heard that, and there were trials that I went through because of that. I was blessed with a new job 3 weeks later, but I still had 3 weeks where I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
And your mind will play tricks on you when you're going through life without a job. Because you're sitting there wondering, oh, how am I going to pay that bill? Where's this money going to come from? Blah, blah, blah. You know, you start getting a little, even though, and Randy will tell you, when we talked during those 3 weeks, I knew God, there was never a doubt in my mind God was going to take care of me. Never a day went by where I was like,
Yep.
you know, yeah, I think I'm going to throw in the towel now. You know, never. Never believed that for a second. You know, because I believed at that time that God was bringing us through this. You know? So, and I have the list here, like, you know, regarding the money thing, like you just said, you know, having God blesses people with different things, and you know, He can bless you with a job with great money because He knows you're going to be a good steward of that money, and you're going to do things with it. You know, we talk about tithing and that 10%. Some people, you know, shouldn't pay 10% because you make so little, you have to take care of yourself. But you've got to make that up somewhere else. You have a service to give to God. So whether you're giving 10% of your money or 10% of your time, you should be giving. There are also people who make millions of dollars a year who should be giving more than 10%. Because he who is blessed with more, there is more expectations. So the 10% would be an average rule to go by. But if you're making $5 million, you can afford to give up more than 10%. And I'm saying 5 million as an exaggeration. You know, as far as I'm concerned, six figures.
Sounds good, Brother Mike.
I'm sure. I wish. But that's that little lecture. We're talking about obedience here again. You know, about how. Actually, this is a good place to stop. How about waiting until being told it's time to go. Go ahead and get off the ark now. You know. I think that if we take anything away from this lesson today, it is the obedience, the spirit of discernment, you know, and just the reminder, because I know I'm talking to Christians, just a reminder that when you're that number one, you have to be obedient. I don't care how long you've been a Christian. I don't care if you're a pastor. I don't care if you're a bishop. I don't care who you are. God expects us to be obedient.
Oh, yeah.
That's the most important thing we can do. Once we receive Christ into our heart, we have to be obedient in our journey. Go ahead.
You know, Brother Mike, God puts things in our minds and in our very being, saying, you need to do this, do that. But we run ahead, I said. We get ahead of God.
Yeah.
We need to be patient and wait to make sure that that's what it's coming from
Yes.
God, you know.
Yeah, because sometimes you got to tarry over your prayer. You got to wait.
Yeah.
Wait upon the Lord, and you shall
Yeah.
renew your strength.
Yeah. As we know, I've gotten into this habit of having a different picture every week on there just to entertain you people. But this one actually has significance. Does anybody know what this is?
That's the new created island.
Not you. We already talked about it. Zip it. Yeah.
That's the newly created island from the earthquake.
Let's say that again a little louder.
The newly created island. From the
Newly
earthquake.
created island. From where?
Pakistan.
Yeah,
Pakistan, but from what?
From the earthquake.
From the earthquake. How long did it take for that?
A day.
A day.
Yeah.
This is a new island. These are little boats over here surrounding the island. You see all of this stuff? This is how this goes around, and you can see how the rippling effect. This is steam. Okay? If you recall when we talked about the day of creation and how there was light, but he had not yet created the sun, because we're talking about the light of Christ was let there be light. You know what I'm saying? And how we talked about thermal heat. When things are being created, it creates friction and thermal heat from underneath, right? You can see it here. This didn't take 10,000 years to create.
Took a day.
This didn't evolve. One day it wasn't there. The next day, it's there. And they're, oh, look at this. And yet nobody's coming out and saying anything about that. I'm letting you know, God created this little island.
Yep.
And there should be absolutely no question. This is an example, and in your lifetime, in 2013, this took place. There should not be any question in your mind that God is not capable of creating earth. Because He just did. In front of your face. Right now there should be billions of people having this conversion at an altar. They should be giving their souls to God because He just gave you an example of His power and His authority over everything. From an earthquake, He created this little itty-bitty island. And it's perfectly round. And it's just, hey, listen, I would wake up. I'm just saying. And I've talked to people about this. And people at work who are evolutionists. Did you hear about that island that was created in, I don't know, a day? You go to sleep one day, nothing there. You wake up, boom, island. Do you remember how I said, how would we react if something fell from the sky that we've never seen before? We don't even know what it is. Something completely new. Not a hybrid of some species that presently exists. I can't even create something in my imagination that is just boom, one day there it is. Well, here's a new island for you. Is that good enough?
It's quite apparent that it's not a small island. Because
No,
those boats
these are boats.
are
over
kind
here.
of small.
Is it the Hawaiian Islands? No. But I mean, what more do you need to see that God exists?
No, but that's the thing. That's an island full of lava. That's a it's a
But
you know.
hey,
It's
how
rock.
long do you think it's going to take before vegetation grows on that?
Exactly.
10 million years?
No,
You think there's going to be some dinosaurs on there and all that kind of stuff?
I don't know. If God wants a dinosaur on there, He'll probably put
I'll bet you that by next summer there's going to be vegetation on
I
there.
bet you they turned that into Jurassic Park.
All right. We're going to leave on Billy's note there. We'll be back in 30.
Like your turbo, I'm good.
Take 5, come back at 11 for service.
Billy, let's petition. I think they ought to make a church right there.
Good.
Whole world, for the whole world to go
I
to.
get excited, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
I carried some grass in here.
Yeah, I think you've been putting some grass in that pipe you smoked.
You happy now?
You'll get up, Brother Golden? Wow.
Rock of ages.
Glad for me.
What's going on?
Oh, I love you, man. Thank you for saying that.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
You're not sick.
Where's the kid?
They're at her grandma's house.
I'll say I'm not.
She went to that thing for the raising tree.
Oh, I didn't know you went.
And I had to do everything yesterday, so we just sent the girls to her grandma's.
Well, did you have fun down there? Yeah, they said they had a good time.
I'm okay. Yeah, still feeling the joy.
She's scheduled for surgery.
Go in line.
I think they should call that surgery and say, you'll have to cut off somebody else.
Where are you going?
He was working last night.
Oh, yeah.
Where are you going? And then I'll be able to
It's awful. Come home with bad,
No, I forgot to go grab one. Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And did they say what stage this is?
Yeah.
I'm glad
10
you enjoy it.
weeks.
Well, I can just see. I'll see like 4 of them like you
I didn't know
I don't go back until Tuesday afternoon.
Shoot, man.
I mean, I knew it was like, about this, like, but I didn't know it's like complete, like formed. Yeah.
Pretty good.
I guess just the organs and stuff have to get finished up and get and grow. I forgot to grab. I grabbed the feet, but I forgot to grab a baby.
Are you guys going to the house?
Little refreshing.
Yeah, get a break. That's nice to come back when you're tired. Like,
That's what we do. Are you gonna alone, or is it? I don't know. I didn't talk to him. Because if he isn't worried about
go back here and get a drink.
are you guys gonna go like after? Yeah, to go to let's put my stuff in your trunk. I have I could leave on box which I want to get one to you.
Do it again?
I